Welcome to Scoop World Orders Saturday. It is official weekend mania on Ohio State's campus. JJ Smith is in the building. There are some superstars in the building. Walker on campus, James Peoples, a lot of committed guys, a couple of really big fish that would be really nice, especially a big offensive tackle that we're going to talk about. That'd be great to round the class out. But this is high pressure, 200 mile an hour time for Ohio State with their staff, with camps, with official visits now in the summer over the weekend, and also summer conditioning. We had a huge update, huge nugget, some emerging superstars, a lot of great things going on at Ohio State. And man, these coaches are racing to get to vacation time in about 3 weeks. But man, these next 3 weeks are going to be earning their checks because it is a lot of work, a lot of hours, and a lot of pressure. So with that being said, as always, thank you guys for tuning in on Saturday. We're going to go here for about a half hour, get you guys right into your Saturday night festivities. Again, I really appreciate you guys as always. Please click that like button. That is huge for us. Click the subscribe button. Also, if you enjoy this live content, click the alert bell. You'll get an alert every time we go live. We love kicking it with you guys. We love your questions. We appreciate you guys. And as always, shout out where you guys are watching from. Again, we're seeing new, not just new states, new countries all over the world that are tuning in. It's amazing. We're still waiting for our first alien to tune in. But as soon as you aliens are ready to tune in, just click that in the comments. I'm just teasing. But, I appreciate you guys, as always, kicking it with us on Saturday. I'm going to bring in my favorite alien, Mr. Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you on this Saturday night?
Man, I thought this would be like a slow Saturday, and it's not. It's cooking. So lots of stuff going on. Official visits, like you said, we're kind of in between camps right now with camp season. Some tax changes for things for NIL, and an imminent alien invasion. So yeah, there's an awful lot going on right now in the world and the Ohio State world.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, Brandon Baker is on campus. This is his official visit. He's a guy that would be a cornerstone gem to add to this class as a tackle prospect. Ian Moore is a guy I talked to people at the Woody Hayes. He looked fantastic at camp, 310, ripped, shredded. He's got an offensive line coach as his head coach in Indiana, which is huge. You can see the development. You see the strength coming. Again, Nevada, I know you love Ohio-based offensive linemen, but we can annex, I guess, part of Indiana with Ian Moore, since he's basically, that's kind of like Ohio West, because it's kind of like the same state, just with less pro football teams. But I'm excited about Ian. What are your thoughts on him? Obviously Brandon Baker. There's been a lot of buzz out of camp the last few days. A lot of young guys, a lot of young offers. What have you gleaned from the information that we've gotten the last few days? We had Bill the Bank Green, Joe Drame walking at camp. They took a ton of notes. They gave us a lot of feedback on what they liked, what they didn't like. So what do you make of the last few days for Ohio State?
Well, it's been great. It just shows you how much momentum Ohio State has on the recruiting trail, and some of the guys that they've got. I mean, like you said, Indiana. I mean, you've got think about DeJuan Jones, Josh Fryer, Jimmy Chitwith, all from Indiana, all great Buckeyes right there. Little Hoosiers reference there for you guys see if you guys are paying attention right there. But no, Ohio State's done well with Indiana linemen as of late, and Moore looks like the next really, really special one. I mean, I think he might have been one of the biggest surprises coming out of that camp. The people from Ohio State were like, wow. They were even impressed in terms of kind of the transformation in the young man. He's a guy that Rivals had as the number one offensive tackle in the country, and people were kind of laughing at that. We were kind of having a good time with that a little bit. And you know what? He might be. I mean, he looks that good. So Justin Fry's got himself a good one. It's from Ohio East, that is Indiana, and or Ohio West rather, and he looks like just a heck of a player. And for Ohio State right now, they've been feasting on the in-state linemen. Hey, we'll go to Indiana. We'll get the next good one. And Justin Fry looks like he's having himself a little bit of a mini run here on the offensive line, and that's good news for 2024 and beyond.
Totally agree. I think that we've got a really a strong chance with this class. And again, like with the portal, we throw in Josh Simmons, a kid who's probably going to start for us this year, a kid that's looked fantastic. Again, really smart move by him to show up in fantastic shape. He lost weight. ready to run. Like there's nothing that makes me happier than when offensive linemen show up lighter than they were when we recruited them because you come here in the summer, man, and they run you to death. So, if you're not ready to run and you're heavy and you're falling out of drills, then it's really really painful to be a part of. So I'm just glad he's light, he's in shape, he's ready to go. But yeah, these official visits in the summer. I mean, these guys are burning the candle at both ends, basically. These coaches, I mean, 'cause they got to do camps all week. The days they don't have camps, they're doing evaluations of the previous camps. They're watching film, kind of reorganizing their recruiting boards. Again, I've been in these meetings. I've been in their long days, long meetings. They're organizing the next day's camp. They're calling and confirming kids to make sure that they're getting to camp, make sure they don't have any logistical problems, especially for the high end guys, the superstars. Do they need anything to get there or whatever? But it's crazy. Like I said, and this is like a weekend where I think the coaches really like knocking this one out because there's a lot of kids that are already committed. The Armstrong twins are here. Mark Nave's here. James Peoples. Like, so you get, when you have kids that are basically locked into the class and you have no worries about them committing unless you want them to commit elsewhere, it's nice to get that big visit out of the way early because I'm telling you, when kids are low maintenance and they're not going to go anywhere, you just want to have that big lump weekend where you get all those official visits done. It's a super long weekend for Ryan Day because he has to meet with all their families and meet with all the coaches. Everybody, has to have time with Ryan Day, but the guys that really need Ryan Day are J.J. Smith and Brandon Baker, the 5-star tackle from Mater Day, because those guys are going to measure how much time they get with the head coach versus how much time do they get with Kirby Smart, with Spencer Lanning, Oregon, like these guys that are competing with them, USC Lincoln Riley, the head coach. And again, I know people they like to kind of convolute things. When you're a 5-star superstar at a premium position like receiver, quarterback, offensive tackle, your lead recruiter is the head football coach. It's not the position coach. So if these guys, if JJ Smith goes to Georgia, he ain't just hanging out with the wide receivers coach. He's hanging out with Kirby Smart the entire time because that's how you trump it. That's how you raise it up, is when the head coach is the one who's showing you the love. The head coach is the one picking you up at the airport. The head coach is the one sitting with you and your family at dinner. That's kind of just how it works. I mean, Urban was the master of that. He was the guy that when the superstar came in, Raekwon McMillan came into town, Urban's the lead recruiter there. It's not, Luke or anybody else. It's Urban because, your head coach is kind of your automatic A-list talent. He's your Mick Jagger. He's the guy that everybody, when you walk into Hyde Park and, downtown on the Cap and Ryan Day's walking in with J.J. Smith and Brandon Baker, everybody looks at Ryan Day. They might not know people probably know who Brian Hartline is, but for the rest of the coaches, most people that are just common folks don't know who those guys are, but they know who Ryan Day is because he's the face of the franchise right now. Nevada, as we get into some summer workout stuff, we had a great nugget today. A lot of intrigue, but there's one big, huge, massive name that kind of piqued my interest and your interest. You got some information. Talk a little bit about a special quarterback who has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and by chip I mean like a boulder on his shoulder right now.
Well, again, I don't want to give away the nugget. You got to go to BuckeyeScoop.com, but I'd say that one of the quarterbacks is kind of emerging in training in a big way, and really making an impression on his teammates in a big way, and really was kind of a surprise. So, like I said, if you don't have a subscription to BuckeyeScoop.com, you need to get one because I thought it was good. And people that have been reading these for a long time, look, you can read information, whether it be an update from a thing or from a source or whatever it is, and you can read when you're reading just stuff or when you're reading the real stuff. And this is the real stuff. So you'll read it and you'll look at stuff and say, man, that's information that I can't get anywhere else. That's information that nobody else knows. That's information that is definitely legit. And it's on BuckeyeScoop.com today. But it's a real good nugget if you're interested in catching up on who's impressing the staff, who's impressing the other players, and who's really emerging as the team leaders, maybe even from out of nowhere. Check it out today. Great nugget, and I know you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. Like I was stunned by the comparison that was made, and honestly, I was really intrigued and excited about it. But I think that there's some realness to some of the small school bias that comes in recruiting and why guys might be rated lower than they probably should be. I think that, for instance, if Ian Moore went to high school in Georgia, would he not be a unanimous 5-star? He's a 5-star on Rivals. He's a 4-star on 247. But like again, he plays in Indiana. You watch his film, and he's throwing around a bunch of little farm boys that are midgets, killing them. So again, I think that a lot of these guys that are evaluators for major sites are guys that have never coached football, they've never played football, they don't really know football, and they just kind of worked their way up, going to camps, kind of maybe doing nothing. So their evaluations aren't really great because they've never really had to stake their livelihoods on their evaluations. So, a lot of them, they just kind of offer gaze and star gaze and, okay, well, this kid has Georgia, Florida, Clemson, so he's a 5-star. Okay, this guy has Georgia, Bama, Clemson, so he's a 5-star. This guy has Indiana, Toledo, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio State, so he's a high 3-star. But I think that the problem is like a lot of these Southern schools, they don't go to Indiana for much talent. They don't go to Ohio for much talent. They don't go to northern parts of the country for much talent because they don't really have to. But in turn, these kids, their offer sheets aren't as robust as Southern kids, where they get a lot of real offers, they get a lot more fake offers. But I think that artificially inflates their star rankings. I think that some of these guys that are 5-stars stink, and some of these guys that are 4-stars stink. And then there's some guys that are 3-stars that they're just not as observed. They're not as many camps. They don't have the exposure of playing in the biggest stages of like Georgia football, Florida football, Texas football. So they don't get as many eyeballs or as many evaluations as the kids that are at the bigger schools. So some of these kids slip through the cracks. And I think that like Ian Moore, if he was at Peachtree Ridge in Georgia, he'd be the number 1 tackle in the country unanimous. And he's a guy that, again, his head football coach in high school is a really good offensive lineman. He's a guy that played college football, knows college football. He runs his team like an offensive line. So there's a lot of strength training, a lot of hard work, a lot of grinding. And that does nothing but just amplify Ian Moore's stock in my mind. Like when your head coach is an offensive line guy and he played college football and really knows his stuff, then that kid's he's gonna be coached up. He's gonna get here. Again, in the things that I saw from our guys that took video of him, he looks like a guy who's been coached up. Like there's certain guys that when you see him, they look like they've either never been coached or they're just supremely raw, or they're making a transition position wise, maybe from tackle to guard or tight end to tackle or D line to offensive guard. But Ian Moore's been coached and he looks really fluid. He looks really good. But I'm just super excited about that. Nevada, the NIL thing is something that we don't talk about a lot just because most people don't care about it and they don't like listening to it. But the tax status has changed for nonprofits in the NIL space. What do you make of that? The fact that you're no longer able to take a deduction for a donation to a 501c3 that is a foundation for NIL. How does that change the game? Should Ohio State fans care? What do you see happening, over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 months with this change?
Well, I mean, again, that's, I want to make sure people understand exactly what they're talking about. If you make a donation to like NIL to support an NIL, you don't get a tax deduction anymore. That's a massive change. Before you donate $1,000, you're able to write 40% off the taxes, so it really only costs you $600. Now the IRS is saying, nope, those are not legitimate expenses. You donate $1,000, you get no tax deduction. So I think it's going to have a chilling impact on the amount of money going into these NIL foundations, and ultimately it's going to have a trickle down to the players. So, I think the only path for these foundations to run effectively is with some uber rich mega donor who's not concerned with tax status or tax donations. Example would be Oregon with Phil Knight. A guy who's a multi-billionaire who doesn't care, who's just putting money in there because he wants Oregon to be good, not looking for the deduction. But if you're clipping coupons and you're going to the individual, donors like a lot of the Ohio State foundations have, and hey, donate $1,000 and get cookies with Ryan Day, or donate $2,000 and get to sit in the jacuzzi at the WAC, that type of stuff. That stuff's going to be gone. So, like I said, we don't want to spend a lot of time on NIL, because I know I can tell by the number whenever we start talking about NIL, people start snoozing and turning off. But this was big. Losing the tax deduction for NIL donations, seismic change. Will be interesting to see how it shakes out and how it ultimately affects Ohio State.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to be really interesting to see how it works out. We we've got some guys that we might talk about. A kid named Albert Hill is a young kid out of Hoban, 2026. Got the offer. Again, a kid from Akron that young gets that Ohio State offer. Automatically, you think he's going to be a Buckeye. He will end up a Buckeye. And there's going to be another camp on Monday that'll be interesting to check out and see how this goes. Nevada, we got 4 camps left. The first camp seemed to go pretty well. But again, how important are these camps in your mind? Are they still as important as they used to be? I mean, I think that some big changes over the last 5-6 years, the head coach being able to go on the road, the advent of film being digital where you can see these guys a lot easier. These kids are on YouTube. They have trainers. There's training facilities. There's a lot more film of these kids now than there ever has been. How important is camp? Is it still important? I feel like for super young guys to get on the radar, it's very important. But for older guys, man, it's hard to find many hidden gems at this point. When you're going to be a junior or senior, these schools know who you are. And there might be a few that are on the razor's edge of getting that Ohio State offer that's coveted. But what do you make of camps now as we go forward with Ohio State?
Well, I think my viewpoint's kind of moderated on this, and really moderated as a result of the first camp at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State was asking some kids to come and asking them to see if they were going to compete and work out and try out, and making certain suggestions, and even some committed kids to refining their technique and things they needed to work on. So I think my answer might have been different a week ago. I would have said less important, looking for just hidden gems, maybe just solely important for the younger guys. But I think it's important for some of the older guys too. So, Ohio State's treating these camps with a certain degree of seriousness, and for them, they're looking, how badly do you want to be part of this program? How badly are you willing to come and, take off the dress pants and put on the cleats and compete and go out there and size up against other people that are looking for your spot as well. So I think Ohio State's putting in, they're putting a lot of emphasis in it, and because Ohio State's putting a lot of emphasis in it, I'm certainly paying attention to that, because I think it's a little different, a little bit more important than even I thought it would be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, some of these guys, and again, I've seen kids do this move before where they show up to camp, we're expecting them to work out, they don't work out. And I know that leaves a massive negative taste in the mouth of the coaches when we had a kid named Dennis Finley who ended up going to Michigan State, and he ended up being a bust. He ended up being a kid that never did anything. But he was a kid that we offered. He was a kid that we wanted. I didn't like any part of his game. He was a good-looking kid, taller kid, but very low motor. Didn't have that look that I thought where he'd be a productive college football player and a productive offensive lineman. He didn't have the mentality that I like in an offensive lineman, which is a workhorse, a grinder, a guy who's ready to go to war every day. Like, he was a guy that he showed up to camp, only had sandals, didn't even bring cleats. So he couldn't work out because he didn't have shoes. We offered to let him borrow cleats. He turned that down. And then, we went through, a full 2-a-day workout, me and, Ed Warner running the drills, and he just stood there. So, and again, like, when you're an Ohio State offer type guy, you should be wanting to step on the field and dominate, or at least compete for an offer or compete for a standing or whatever. But he wanted nothing. He turned it down. He wanted nothing to do with it. So again, like, is that everything? No. Like, if JJ Smith wants to pull that move, I'm good with it. If you're a kid who's a fringe guy, if Laramie Tunsil wants to do that move, I'm good with it. But you're a fringe guy like Dennis was, like, that was a terrible move. And we really didn't recruit him after that day. Like, after he turned it down, we're just like, you know what? We're going to move on. We're good. Appreciate you. Good luck at Michigan State. We can't wait to play against you. And then he never really played. So, but I don't know. I think, you see some of these kids that think that they're, the cock of the walk, and they don't want to. They just want to walk around the field and look pretty and not actually compete, not work out, not do one-on-ones. It reeks of being scared. Honestly, it reeks of not wanting to compete. And when we were with Urban, we were ultra competitive. We were ultra tough. I mean, it was every day was 4th and 1, and that's why he never lost to Michigan. He was 7-0 because he was a guy that he was focused every day. It wasn't a country club, it wasn't soft, and so he turned up every day, man. And those camps were, well, I mean, they were brutal. I mean, they were two 2.5 hour sessions. Take a lunch in the middle, so it was basically a 2-day practice for these kids, and we worked them hard. I mean, those guys, they got after it pretty good, and those one-on-one sessions were tough and lively and brutal. And it was our guys with me and Ed Warner versus Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen, and Mike's the head coach of the Titans. Shane's his DC, and so and again, it was always real competitive between us, because even though if they weren't our kids, because they're just high school kids, we still wanted our kids to win, and that was just part of the eval, and we were coaching them up after every rep, and it was good. But like I said, those camps are. They're shrinking. Like, they're down to just one session now. That's like 2.5 hours, and they have everybody go at once. And again, I don't think you get nearly as good of an evaluation as when they previously did it, when they had the linemen go in the morning and then the skill guys go in the afternoon. But I think that they realize that the numbers are down and the talent levels are down at these camps. And frankly, you don't get the older kids like you used to here, unless they're kids that are right on the fringe of an offer, or kids that are literally offered and they're committed. And Justin Fry wants to put some of those guys through a private workout, like he did with Mark Nave and he did with Ian Moore, and it's just, that's kind of where they're at now. As we keep going into the summer, Nevada, these next 2 weeks are going to be huge for Ohio State. Any prophecies, any predictions of the Oracle, who's one of our recruiting expansion insiders? And honestly, I'd like to ask you some expansion stuff too. Where do you see this going? Again, we're just going to move into expansion because I think that's something we haven't touched on a little bit. The Big Ten's eliminating divisions. There's a lot of balls in motion right now for Ohio State with the expansion topic. Where do you see the Big Ten going over the next 6 months?
Well, let's talk about the eliminating divisions thing first. That's interesting. That's a really interesting thing because, the days of, Ohio State and Michigan battling out on one side and then Iowa and Illinois or whatever going on the other side are gone. It's going to be two best teams in the Big Ten, and you're potentially setting up scenarios where you're going to go Ohio State, Michigan, last game of the regular season, Ohio State, Michigan. Let's run it back in the Big Ten championship game. And that's never happened before, and that certainly is going to be interesting. I mean, potentially you could go Ohio State, Michigan in the regular season thing, Ohio State championship in the Big Ten championship game, and then Ohio State, Michigan in the playoff. You could go 3 consecutive weeks and play Michigan. So, I mean, look, college football is changing, and I think a lot of the changes are positive. I think a lot of the changes are. I mean, playoff time is going to be an extraordinary time to watch, football. Will it diminish the regular season? Is the $1 million question. I think this does diminish the game a bit. How much is yet to be seen. Will guys that are on the border health wise sit a game like this out? You're already having guys sit out games. College football with injuries to save themselves for the NFL draft. With the expansion of the playoff, will they sit out more? I don't know, but look, it's going to be different. But I think a change like this only benefits Ohio State because whereas before, we had to win one side, now we just have to be one of the top 2 teams in the Big Ten to advance to the championship game, and I think that made our path that much easier, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
It's just say it. I mean, we're going to play Michigan 3 times in the next 10 years at some point because they're going to play us in the last game of the season, Big Ten championship, and as they expand these playoffs, I mean, we're going to run into Michigan at some point. It's going to be they're going to get a good team. We're going to get a good team. They're going to burn through the TCUs and the whatevers, and then we're going to see them again. So that'll be obviously a seismic shift in the meaning of the game. I think the game will be much more meaningless as you start playing them twice because, I mean, how many years has Ohio State and Michigan been the top two teams in the Big Ten? Like in my lifetime, it's probably been at least half the years. Where it's like we beat them to go to the Big Ten championship or we lose them and they go to the Big Ten championship. Well, now it's like, if we're both undefeated and, if the tiebreakers work out and there's not another one-loss team in the Big Ten, we're going to see them again in Indy the next week. So, again, I think it's, I'm all for more playoffs. I'm all for more whatever. But, eventually, I mean, it's not going to look anything like college football. It's going to turn into the NFL. The Browns and Steelers are still a big rival, but I think when they play each other 3 times in a year, like they did the one year when they saw each other in the playoffs, like, it's still special and still a bloody rivalry, but it's not the same as that one time a year. And you got to win, and when you win, like you can walk on the on High Street and with your head held high, and like the old Earl Bruce speeches where if you lose for a year, you gotta now it's gonna be like you can walk on High Street for 3 days and you gotta go see him again in Indy, and then you gotta go see him again in Atlanta or Jerry Dome or in Vegas or wherever they're going to host the playoff games or Lucas Oil or whatever. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because like I thought about us playing them twice. I hadn't thought about us playing 3 times, but after you said that, that's absolutely going to happen at some point because if you're again, who runs the world? Money. Who runs the world? The TV contracts. What would they like more in the universe than to, if they're making these brackets or the seeding or whatever, say, ooh, in round 2, we're going to have Ohio State, Michigan again. Imagine the ratings that'll do. Ohio State, Michigan in Las Vegas or or in Atlanta or whatever, a neutral site. Like, hey, you've always seen the game. It's always been in Columbus and Ann Arbor, but now it's going to be in Las Vegas or now it's going to be in LA or now it's going to be in Jerry World. Like, that's going to be like unbelievable to promote because again, it's never been on a neutral site. I mean, to my knowledge, unless it was in 1888 or something like that. I mean, it's always been, Columbus and Ann Arbor. So yeah, that's going to happen. Man.
Kirk, what happens if you beat them 3 times? Do you get 3 pairs of gold pants for beating them?
I hope not. I think that it just cheapens it. I mean, again, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I think that here's the thing. I think if you're going to do the gold pants thing, you can't end your season with a loss to Michigan. So if you lose to them in the playoffs or you lose to, like, I mean, I don't know. Like that's a great question though. I don't think you should get 3 pairs of gold pants. I think you should get a pair for the regular season game and then, it stops. But again, that's up to Ryan Day. I mean, we're in the era where we have 13 captains now, and I think that's completely idiotic and stupid. But we have 7 captains, 20 captains, like that's idiotic. So, I mean, we might as well give everybody 3 pairs of gold pants because why not? But I hope not. Like, I think that like, you keep it just the last game of the season. That's the pants game. Then after that, you can give them some other dumb thing or ring or whatever. But, we got a super chat. Tyler, I appreciate you, my man. All right, Tyler, Kirk, I don't think so. If we play Michigan 3 times a year, it's going to be more intense now because you have a national championship on the line. See, and honestly, I'm sure it will be. I mean, it's always going to get the later you get in the season, the deeper the intensity gets. But that doesn't mean I like it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're playing in the playoffs for the national championship or the right to advance, like, oh yeah, it's going to be extraordinarily intense because that's because not only do you get to beat your rival, but you also get to end their season. And that is just it's something I never get to experience because I never played in the playoffs other than high school. I never played in college playoffs, obviously, because it was before my time. But, the thought of being able to end your rival's season or get the revenge or whatever. Because, I think that, the team that's going to have the advantage in that game, if everything's close and everything's equal, is the team that lost. The team that loses in the first game or loses in the Big Ten championship and then they see in the playoffs, like, it's kind of like when Bama worked over Georgia in that SEC championship game when they had JMO, and then Nick Saban's like, hey, you guys gave us all that, there's all that rat poison that you fed Georgia, and they all died, and we beat them. And then, a month later, Kirby Smart changes everything and whoops Bama. And obviously JMO tore his ACL, which obviously was a massive help for them. But, like that's going to be the intriguing thing about the playoffs. Is like the thing about the playoffs and expanding the playoffs is there's just going to be more football for us to watch that we care about. Because right now with the current product, outside of the playoffs, like those other bowl games are just fodder. They're just like appetizers, I guess. They're not the main course. But when you've got a round of 8 to 12 to 16 or whatever it goes to, I watch every NFL playoff game. I love watching NFL playoffs, and college football playoffs is kind of going to be the same thing because you're going to be scouting ahead to say, oh, well, how's Utah look this year? We played them a few years ago. How's US, or how's a team that maybe you're not as familiar with because they're not in the Big Ten or they're not in the SEC and you don't pay attention to them as much? Like, how do they look? But no, I think that the intensity is going to ramp up because it'll be later in the season. And, when you play in the Big Ten championship against Michigan, it's for a ring. When you play in the playoffs, it's to advance or to win it could be to win the national championship. So,
Yeah, but Kirk, think about it this year. I mean, there should have been, and there was always right in the world. There should have been a rematch between Ohio State and Michigan in the uh, the opening round of the playoff. Can you imagine how big that game would have been if they would have run it back with Ohio State Michigan? That would have been unbelievable. So from that standpoint, the chance to get a rematch, especially like you said, if you're the team that's lost the first time, or say you lost the first time and you lost the second time, and you get a third shot at them. I mean, it's just gonna set up so many different dimensions to things. Like I said, I'm excited about the playoff without a doubt. The question is, how much does it diminish the regular season? And right now, there's some drama. Do we get in the playoff? Do we not get in the playoff? Going forward, let's be honest. There's very little chance Ohio State's not in the playoff somewhere. I mean, when's the last time Ohio State finished outside the top 12? 11. 2011.
Yeah,
I mean,
11, like literally since I've been a part of the program like you go back to '02, the year we won it all against Miami. '04, we probably were outside of that. I don't know if we were at the end of the year, we're probably in the teens because we were 8-4. So we probably would have been right on the fringe. Obviously, 11 was, we 7 losses as an albatross. That was a complete disaster of a season. Tressel got fired on Memorial Day, but every other year, dude, we're in the playoffs. So again, for us and for Buckeye fans and Buckeye Scoop members and people that love following Ohio State, we're going to be seeing a lot of playoff appearances in the future. And honestly, I love that. That's a great point by you. I mean, again, do you agree with me that the team that loses the first game has the advantage? Because I just can't imagine that it wouldn't be that way. And maybe I'm crazy, but I've seen this movie before. I've seen that underdog thing before. I've seen that retribution, that second chance thing before. Do you agree with that, Nevada?
oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to beat a team twice in the same season. It's really hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season, unless there's just a grand canyon of difference between the talent levels between the teams. And even so, sometimes those things can set up those uh, you know, overconfidence rematch type of situations, as you point out. So no, we're definitely getting into a dimension that we've never been in before. We can debate all day whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's going to be, but it's going to be different, and it's going to add some storylines and stuff that if we thought we've seen every storyline on the Ohio State, Michigan game, Michigan, Ohio kids playing for Michigan, Michigan kids playing for Ohio, kids transferring, coaches moving back and forth, whatever. We've never seen the dimension of the rematch or the rematch on top of the rematch. So it's going to be fun and it's definitely going to be exciting. And from that standpoint, I can't wait. So let's go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think does it slightly diminish the regular season? Sure, but nobody cares about the regular season at all. I mean, we're assumed that we're going to go 11-1 at the worst, 12-0, and if you go 11-1, 12-0 in the regular season, either win the Big Ten or as long as you don't lose like 80-0 in the Big Ten championship, Ohio State's going to be in the playoffs. 8 to 12 team playoff. They expanded to 16. It's and again for Ohio State fans, the thing that you can hang your hat on is we're going to have a legitimate shot to get into the tournament every single year. And by legitimate, I mean like a 99% chance of making the tournament every single year because we're way better than everybody in the Big Ten. SC will be a problem with Lincoln Riley. Michigan's good, and then there's always going to be some random oddball Wisconsin or Penn State. But for us, like we're going to be in the dance. Like the days of us being the number 5 team and just missing the cut for TCU or Baylor or some stupid team like that. Like we're going to be able to, eke into the tournament with them. Because, a lot of those times where we missed the cut or we were the 5 or the 6 or whatever, we had better players. We had better teams. We would have been favored if we played the team that got in at 4, and we just didn't get in because we had a dumb loss. The Purdue loss killed us the one year. The Iowa loss killed us the one year. If we're in an 8-team playoff or a 12-team playoff or a 16-team playoff, we're getting into the dance. And once you get in, man, it just takes the team getting hot and staying healthy. And, it's like with Urban. Like with Urban in 14, man, it was just masterful. He beats that Bama team, by the skin of our teeth. And then, we ran into an Oregon team that, people had the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback that beat the tar out of Florida State in that Rose Bowl. And we just buzzsawed them because we were the hot team and the motivated team. And, again, this is where, Ryan Day's going to have to, start paying attention to what Urban used to do in terms of motivating his guys and getting his guys to peak at the right time, because that's something that Urban was just a master at. That's why he won 3 national titles. That's why he dominated the SEC. That's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about not getting your guys to peak too early during the regular season, and peaking like during that playoff run, because that's when the champions are going to be made, is the guys that play the best at the end of the year. Well, Nevada, it's been
hold on. And Kirk, what is going to be better? Be honest with me now, okay? You and I have been friends for a long time. What is going to be better than having a first-round home playoff game in Lucas Oil Stadium or something like that, with all the tradition that there's there for a home game there in Indiana? What could be possibly better than that?
I mean, there's been some idiotic things said from Ohio State University, but the fact that we would host a home playoff game at Lucas Oil that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in the history of Ohio State football. And again, if you're that scared of the weather, then that means your program's going soft. You need to get it back to being a tough program. It just is what it is. Like, I mean, if you're scared of a little rain, a little snow, a little windy, then time to get tough. Because guess what? Georgia ain't scared of that. LSU ain't scared of that. Bama ain't scared of that. Michigan ain't scared of that. So again, it was disgusting and it was ridiculous. But again, that's where we're at. Hey, we don't want to play in the horseshoe in a game that would probably be the most anticipated game in Ohio Stadium history, outside of like the 1-2 Michigan game and the 2005 Texas game. Hosting the first ever home playoff game at the horseshoe, I couldn't even imagine. Especially if it was. If we were like not if we're a top tier and we're playing the 8 seed or however the seeding works, but hosting a home playoff game and it being like a real opponent, like it being like a good SEC school having to come up north. Because again, we've always talked all this trash, fantasizing about making these southern schools come up and play in the snow, play in the cold. Oh boy, they're not going to leave the locker room when it's 25 degrees in Columbus. Well, now's our chance, because if it happens like that in the playoffs, then they have to come here. Because as of now, none of those guys come north after the month of September, and most of them don't come north ever, because again, they're geniuses. Like if you look at the Georgia Bulldogs schedule for this upcoming season, they have the worst schedule I've ever seen a defending national champion, a back-to-back defending national championship play. You could already put them as the number 1 seed in the tournament in ink, unless they just slip up versus, Bama or whoever they draw out of the West in the SEC championship. So then if they slip up, then they're going to be the number 3. They're either going to be the 1 or the 3 seed in the champion, in the playoffs this year, because there's just no way they're going to lose a game. It's the softest schedule I've ever seen. If you guys haven't seen it, Google it and then write in the comments, yes, Kirk, you are right. That is an embarrassing schedule. But guess what? In modern college football, you get no bonus points for playing a tough schedule. And that's why the SEC are absolute geniuses, and the Big Ten, led by an idiot like Kevin Warren, isn't. We play these tough matchups. We lose early in the season. We got to fight our way back uphill. And then these other schools in the SEC are playing Tennessee Martin week 11 before the Iron Bowl, and they've just become absolute masters at how to maximize their schedule by not making it too hard, because they say they're great at marketing how tough the SEC is, and every week it's hard in the SEC, and I'm like, give me a break. You guys got to play Vanderbilt, and you got to play South Carolina, and you got to play all these turd schools that stink. And there's like 3 juggernauts in the SEC. It's always Bama and Georgia, and then there's always one other team that's good. It could be A&M, it could be Florida, it could be LSU, and then the other 4 years, those teams will alternate stinking and being terrible. So, again, I hope if we do really forego a home playoff game, it'll be the darkest moment, maybe the darkest moment in Ohio State history. If we say that we are just too soft to play when it's windy and snowy, because heaven forbid our receivers have to actually wear long sleeves and be able to catch a ball in something less than 70 degrees and climate controlled. But
but Kirk, I mean, how many times has Gene Smith said this? Like 9 times. I mean, he said it. He keeps saying it, and I'm not sure. When somebody says something, my advice to you is to listen to them and believe them when they say it, because he said it 9 times.
I know it's going to happen. I think I know it's going to happen. I know that we're going to be indoors, and it's going to be just idiotic and ridiculous. And honestly, it literally deletes the home field advantage essentially, because we're not playing at home anymore. We're playing on a neutral site. But again, I'm sure it's going to happen. We'll say the Horseshoe is going to host a playoff game, and we forego the opportunity to host it. So we go to Lucas Oil Stadium and make it a neutral site game. So we'll no longer have the crowd advantage. We'll no longer have any advantage, and the Southern teams will be a lot more comfortable. So again, like I don't want to just go off on another rant about this, but it's just mind-blowingly stupid. And I can't believe that we'd ever not want to play a game in the Horseshoe, especially with turf. Because back when I played, in 06, when our grass was just awful, we had the worst grass in the entire country. And again, it was funny. I saw Jim Tressel on Friday yesterday, and we were talking about that. And I was like, do you remember how bad the grass was in the stadium in 06? And he's like, well, Mark Quisenberry, our film guy, said that it was going to be a monsoon on Saturday during training camp. And I remember this now that he said it. So we moved our scrimmage to a Friday. And the day we scrimmaged in the Horseshoe, it was a monsoon hurricane. And guess what? We destroyed the field, like completely destroyed it, to the point where we had to get it resodded before the season started. So, and this is like in the middle of camp. So, we had to play our opening game, a couple of weeks later there. And the field was terrible because it was like freshly laid down sod. So it had no roots, you had no footing. And then, so that field got torn up because it had no time to take. And then I remember after the Minnesota game in the middle of the season, we resodded it again because it was the worst field in the universe. And then for the Michigan game in 06, the 1-versus-2 game, that was literally sod with no roots in the ground. So, I mean, go watch that game and see how many times guys are flying, slipping, falling. I remember Lamar Woodley, the defensive end I was going against, he has cleats in the ground, and he comes out of his stance, and you see this giant chunk of grass go flying in the air. And I was like, can we please get turf? I hate turf, but it's like at least it's consistent. But, when you're playing in a winter game, you don't have to worry about your turf being terrible, your grass being terrible, because it's turf. So there's really no benefit. And I know that turf is much harder on your knees. There's been studies that show how bad it is for your knees, but at least it's consistent. So I'll take terrible for my knees, and I'll probably tear my ACL, but at least it's consistent, because bad grass is worse than that. And again, you guys watch the Arizona Cardinals play, you watch the Fiesta Bowl games on that terrible surface they roll in and out for the field. It's grass in a dome. That's the worst field in the country. But again, like, we have turf, we need to play at home. Okay, we good? You got any final thoughts as I rant about us being soft?
No, not at all. Mean Gene is saying stuff. We got to believe him. You can write to Mean Gene at OSU.com and say, Gene, I don't know what you're talking about. We need to play in Columbus. I don't care if the hot dogs are cold and the cocoa is lukewarm. We got to play in Columbus. We know it gets cold, but we're okay. We're tough enough to handle it.
And if the 70-year-olds in Canton, if it's too late for them, just tell them to stay home. We like night games. We like having a festival atmosphere for our recruits. So when you're worried about the old people not being able to get home after night games, tell them to stay home and watch it on their TVs. They'll be okay.
Or stay at Casa de Barton. Casa de Barton is always open for anybody that wants to stay. You guys can come by and hang out and swim in the pool. You've got a pool that's heated. I mean, this is free HBO. I mean, it's like a resort, man. It's like a resort.
It's because I got my login is Nevadabuck at gmail.com. Password Nuggets, capital N. So, oh my God. Well, we got to get you off. It's UFC time. Well, We appreciate you guys. This is a lively one. As always, thank you guys for tuning in, kicking it with us. Thank you, Brass Tags, Hamas Hero. You guys are our regulars. As always, we love seeing you guys on here. Thank you guys so much. Again, fantastic show. A lot of personality, a lot of grit. That's what we bring, boy, and we love it, and we appreciate you guys. So that being said, if you enjoy this content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe. Also, let me know where you guys are watching from. Shout out where you're from in the comments. Always do that. I saw some Texas in the house. Saw Kentucky. I see people from all over the place in this chat. So thank you guys. As always, we appreciate you guys so much. If you guys love this stuff, if you guys are the biggest and the best Ohio State fans, you need to subscribe to BuckeyeScoop.com. Father's Day is coming. If your wife, your mom, your baby mama, your daughter, your kid, whoever is asking, Dad, what do you want? Say, I want to join BuckeyeScoop.com, the number one community for Ohio State fans. It is a blast. We are on there all the time. We're about to be watching UFC tonight. We watch the NBA together, watch the NHL together, game threads, camp threads, Build a Bank Green recruiting coverage, the Oracle expansion coverage. Our inside team information is the best in the business, and we're killing it. So we're the site that everybody else likes to read to get their information. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We appreciate you guys as always. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I hope you guys are enjoying this content. So thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I will talk to you guys soon. Go Bucks.